For aeons, powerful beings resided in a place beyond space, between the wormholes, pure psychic entities. They lacked physical form and lived without fear of pain or death. Little can be said for certain about these beings or their origins, as their existence predates the records of even the oldest known civilizations in the galaxy. They observed passively, watching the galaxy progress, but rarely interacted with the species that lived within. This changed suddenly, when one of their species died. Many have speculated about the cause of this death, but so far, the matter remains a mystery. This was the first time one of their kind had experienced death, and others reacted first with curiosity, followed by horror. The horror only grew worse as death began to spread. The deaths started to mount, and the rest began to recognize the signs of entropy and decay in themselves. Plague found salvation in physical form, using its power to spread itself and re-assimilate any that it infected.
Hey everybody, this is War Boss Fitz. Before we go any further, I want to say thank you to everybody who has been watching the videos and subscribed. Let's get down to what everybody's here for. Today we're going over the Plague Demons. Wonderful little bundles of rot. So let's start off with the special rules. On the screen here, this is all the special rules that you're going to see when you go into the army builder. The ones that are important for this army is going to be Demon. You get to be deployed if you had Ambush or Scout. Of course, everything in the army has this because everything in the army is a demon. Now, Scout means that you get a 12-inch move before the game starts. You can actually read it there right next to it on the other side. Scout, this model may deployed after all of the units, and then may move up to 12 inches, ignoring terrain. And then Ambush at the top of the first column. This model may be kept in reserve instead of deploying. At the start of any round after the first, you may place the model anywhere over 9 inches away from enemy units. So what that means is this army is going to be very mobile, a lot more mobile than you think rotting corpses would be. So the next big thing in this army is going to be the regeneration rule there in the second column. When taking a wound, roll 1 die on a 5+, it is ignored. Again, everything in the army is going to have regeneration because they're all rotting bags of pus. Now for the upgrades of the individual units, down at the bottom we have Banner of Plague. The attached units get Rending in melee. The Gift of Plague, attached units get +1 to regeneration rolls. With that, that means that fully half of the wounds that you take with this army, you're just going to ignore. Then Slime Trap. Enemy units that fight in melee against this unit count as having the slow special rule for the rest of the game. If you want to ambush something down and charge into their fastest unit, all of a sudden, guess what? You're slow now. And then Symbol of Plague. Once per activation, roll XD6 for each 4+. An enemy unit within 18 inches must take a dangerous terrain test. So what it means, roll XD6, whatever the Symbol of Plague gives for the different units, it'll show a number. It'll be like Symbol of Plague 1 or Symbol of Plague 2, 3, 4. You just roll that many dice. And it has a pretty hefty range with 18 inches. I've found in my experience this is really, really good when the enemy has those large chaff units of like 20 models. Because you throw this at them, they're going to take a handful of wounds just because. Now on to the spells. Blessed Virus for 1. Target friendly unit within 12 and it gets stealth next time it's shot at. Muscular Atrophy for 1. Target enemy unit within 18 and it takes 1 hit with Blast 3. Putrefaction for 2. Target 2 friendly units within 12. They get AP 1 next time they fight in melee. Plague Curse for 2. Target enemy unit within 9 takes 1 hit with AP 4 and Deadly 3. Pestilence for 3. Target 2 enemy units within 6. They get -4 next time they advance or -8 next time they charge. And lastly is Rot Wave for 3. Target enemy unit within 12 inches takes 6 hits with AP 2. Couple of nice upgrades here. Now, Blessed Virus, there's not much shooting in this army. You're going to be trying to get within 12 inches of the enemy every chance you get, so I don't know if stealth would be that beneficial for you. Muscular Atrophy, 1 hit with Blast 3. It's a 1 power spell. Firing at chaff units, it's a good little pop bang spell. Putrefaction is really nice. You're going to see that this army, like most of the demons, is close combat oriented, and the extra AP is really nice. Plague Curse, One shot at AP4, deadly 3. That's a nice little extra damage on a vehicle or a heavily armored target. Pestilence is also really nice there towards the end of the game when the enemy is starting to scramble for objectives, or if they're trying to get away from you, because it's only a 6-inch range. But if you land near a fast unit and you hit them with this, all of a sudden you're going to be able to catch them. And then Rot Wave, 6 hits with AP2. This is real nice because it's got a large number of hits with an AP2 attached to it. You don't see that very much. That's better than auto hitting with like 2 heavy machine guns. So starting with our units, let's start with the Plague Furies first. Quality 5, defense 5, 5 rending claws, 2 attacks apiece with poison and rending. They're demons, flying, and they regenerate. Their only option is to replace the rending claws with an arm blade, swapping out the rending for the AP1. The number one reason why I would take poison or rending is not because I'm fishing for 6s, but it's the -1 to the regeneration rolls. So swapping out the rending claws for the arm blade, you retain the -1 to regeneration because you have poison, and you always get the AP1 instead of trying to fish for 6s. Next unit is the Plague Warriors. Quality 4, defensive 4 with 5 hand weapons, A1 with poison, demon, and regeneration. Now here you can replace the hand weapons for your flavor of weapon you're looking for. And again, here we see with the halberd, we end up with poison and rending. And again, I would look for a FAQ on whether or not those two effects stack. Now that I'm thinking about it, poison and rending on the same weapon. Poison means if you roll a 6, you have to re-roll your armor save. And rending means you can only save on a 6. So that's a dirty little trick for these dirty little guys. Let's move on to the next one. The spear, poison, and counter. Counter means that whenever you get charged, you get to attack first. You don't really see that come up a lot in Grimdark Future. You get to see it a lot in Age of Fantasy. And the fun thing about the demon armies is they are cross-compatible. Their army lists are the same in both systems. So if you make a demon army, you have both a Grimdark Future and an Age of Fantasy army. Next is the Great Weapon, 1 attack at AP2 with poison. And then dual hand weapons with 2 attacks and poison. Now, when I break down the army list I did for the battle report, I gave all of my warriors dual hand weapons because doubling the output of attacks to me, being a smooth-brained orc, roll more dice, do more better, right? Now, another way to get the poison and the rending on the same weapons with the dual hand weapons is you can give them a banner of plague for 20 points. That gives all your weapons rending. And then you have the options for a sergeant, a musician, and a banner. Again, this is something that you see in Age of Fantasy more than Grimdark Future. Sergeant means you take one model and they get +1 better on their quality, which I normally don't do because my brain only fires out of 7 out of 8 cylinders. So remembering that one guy has an extra quality, it's hard for me to do. So a musician means that you get to move an extra inch when you're using move actions. So if you need to squeeze a little bit of speed out of your army, that's a way to do it. Put a musician in with the warriors. The banner gives you +1 to your morale rolls. So in that case, you'd be rolling for your morale checks on quality 3 instead of a 4. Then we're going to do the Plague Swarms. Look at these guys. They're kind of morbidly cute. Quality 6, defensive 6, 3 swarm attacks apiece. So they have 3 attacks apiece with poison, demon, regeneration, strider, and tough 3. Now, there's no upgrades with this unit, and let me tell you, being quality in defensive 6, don't expect these guys to do a thing. Best case use for these, in my opinion, well, let me say, everything I'm putting out here is my opinion. And again, smooth brain orc, disclaimer. But in my opinion, the Plague Swarms would be best suited because they have ambush to drop down on turn 2 or 3, hide, and jump on an objective. Plague Fly Riders. Quality 4 and defensive 3. Hand weapons for 1 attack with poison and 3 stingers for 3 attacks at AP1. Demon, regeneration, strider, and tough 3. You can upgrade them all to have poison spit, 12 inches, 3 shots with poison. You can replace the stingers, but really what you're doing is you're upgrading the stingers to have poison for 5 points, which, 5 points, go ahead. And then they can have the sergeant, musician, and the banner attachment as well. Now, they have Strider, but they don't have Fast, and they have Defense with Tough 3. So I would see these guys as kind of a shock troop. With Regeneration and Defensive 3, they're going to be able to shrug off a lot of damage. And then with poisoned weapons and AP weapons, they're going to be able to get in there and do a little mixing up with the enemy. Personally, I wouldn't put poison spit on them because they're going to be doing more attacks if they're in combat, while the 40 points is upgrading you with 9 shots with poison. But there's that whole 12-inch range. In my mind, if I'm within 12 inches of the enemy with this unit, I'm going to charge them. I wouldn't spend the points to make them spit, but your mileage may vary. You might have a lot smarter tactical brain than me. The Plague Demon Spawn, quality 4, defensive 4, with dual mutated claws with 6 attacks, AP 1, poison. Demon, Fear 1, mutations, regeneration, strider, and tough 6. That was a relatively cheap unit. Again, with Demon and Ambush, a cheap unit to throw at somebody. Tell them to deal with it. Now, it does have the mutations rule. The mutations rule is whenever you attack or whenever you're in melee, you roll a dice. On a 1 to 3, all of your weapons get poison, and on a 4 to a 6, all of your weapons get +1 AP. So it's a little bit of a wild card. I would throw him at the enemy, tell him to deal with it, and see what happens. Next unit is the Plague Beast. Quality 4, defensive 3, 6 attacks with poison, Demon, Fear, Regeneration, Slime Trap, and Tough 6. The only reason I use the Plague Snails for this model is because it has Slime Trap. They don't have a dedicated Plague Beast model in the range. I just thought this was perfect for it because of Slime Trap, Snail, you know, stuff. So Toughness 6 at defensive 3. Again, it's another kind of a throw them at the enemy, see what happens. And with Slime Trap, this guy is the one that you're going to use to slow down your enemy's fastest units if you catch them first. No upgrades. You're going to see I brought 2 of these because I like snails. The Soul Demon of Plague, quality 3, defensive 2, with a Plague Cannon, 24-inch A9 poison, Plague Sword, A18, poison, Stomp, 6 attack at AP 2, Demon, Fear 3, Regeneration, Tough 18. You can upgrade the Plague Sword with a Plague Gauntlet for 12 attacks at AP 2 with poison, and you can replace the Plague Cannon with a Heavy Plague Cannon, 24, 6 shots, AP 2 and poison. Now this guy's up there, starting off at 770 points. In the size game that I do for the intros, I wouldn't bring this guy even in a larger game. He is the same cost as one of the Titan Lords, but his weaponry is just not really quite comparable. I don't know, this model seems cool in concept. I like the model itself. I would just probably never run one. If I had the option to run this or our next unit, I would run our next unit. Big old Papa Stinky himself, the Avatar of Plague, quality 2, defensive 2, starts off with 2 Plague Swords, 9 attacks apiece with poison and rending, 6 stomp attacks at AP 2. He is a caster 4, a demon, fear 3, hero, regeneration, and toughness 18. Now you can see on the card here, it shows you all the spells that we went over earlier. And then you can replace his Plague Sword with a hammer for 3 attacks with blast 3 and poison, a spear, 3 attacks, AP 1, deadly 3 and poison, a sling, 12-inch range, a 12 poison, or a Plague Gauntlet for 9 attacks, AP 3 and poison. And at the bottom you can give him the symbol of Plague 4, so when the time comes, once per game you can roll 4 dice, and that's when you get the enemy unit within 18 inches. It has to make a difficult terrain test. This guy should be kitted for what you expect to fight. If you're planning on fighting regular baseline troops, keep the swords. If you're expecting to fight heavily armored troops, go with the Plague Gauntlet. If you're expecting to fight Titan Lords, switch out both swords for spears. That way you get 6 attacks, each of them being deadly 3. All the while you can throw around different stinky putrid spells. This guy I would expect to spend about 1,000 points on him. And he's one of those units that could do work and be worth 1,000 points. Next unit is the Ascended Harbinger of Plague. Quality 2, defensive 2, starts off with 2 Great Plague Swords for 6 attacks each, poison and rending, 4 stomp attacks at AP 1, demon, fear 2, hero, regeneration with 12 toughness. Now, just like the big guy, you could switch this guy's weapons out for smaller versions of the hammer, spear, sling, and gauntlet, smaller version of Symbol of Plague, and you can also upgrade him with the Caster 3. Pretty much the same as before, except this guy costs half as much, and he's going to be doing about half the amount of damage. Taking our next step down to the regular Harbinger of Plague. Quality 3, defensive 3, 2 heavy plague swords, 3 attacks apiece this time with poison and rending, and 2 stomp attacks at AP 1. Demon, Fear 1, Hero, Regeneration with Toughness 6. Now again, all the same upgrades as before, but have the amount of power again. This guy gets Symbol of Plague 2 as an upgrade. You can give him wings to where he could be flying, and you can give him Caster 2. Now, the fun part about the Harbinger of Plague, where he's Toughness 6, you can attach him to a unit, where everything before was too tough to be able to attach to things. There's no real upgrading a squad with this guy. He would just be a giant brick of damage and resilience when compared to everything else. Then that takes us to our one true buffing character, the Champion of Plague. Quality 4, defensive 4 with 2 plague swords for 2 attacks each, poison and rending. He's a demon, hero, regeneration, and tough 3. Now you can switch out the plague swords for gauntlets to get a little bit of AP. You can replace one of the swords with a sling in case you really want to have this guy have a ranged attack for some reason. You can replace both plague swords with a plague hammer and a regular sword, or a plague spear and a regular sword. You can also give him the Symbol of Plague. Now this is the only unit you can give a Blessing of Plague, which gives your regeneration rules of you and your unit +1. So including this guy in a unit of warriors means that their regeneration is up to 4 up. So this guy with a Blessing of Plague, if he was completely naked, would be worth taking. That increases the survivability of the unit by a flat 18%, changing that from a 5 up to a 4 up. And then you can give him upgrades too. You can give him upgrades to what he's riding on. He can ride the Throne of Plague. It gives him an extra claw attack, 3 attacks with poison, and an extra 3 toughness. Or you can give him the Giant Snail, which comes with a Toxic Maw attack for 6 attacks with 1 AP with poison. And it also gives him 6 more wounds, adding to his toughness, Slime Trap, but it also makes him slow himself. So again, the breakpoint between the 6 and 9 toughness characters, the Giant Snail won't be able to be attached. This guy won't be able to be riding a Giant Snail and attached to the unit. He would end up being on his own. But the Throne of Plague, he would be able to be attached to a unit. But the number one best use for this character is going to be that Blessing of Plague. So that's it for all the different units of the Plague Demons. There's not very many different units in this army because they don't need it. You'll see that's a theme with the Wormhole Demons, is that if you want to play demons, you have access to all the different gods and all their different units, which is quite a lot. But if you pick a singular god, you just get one of each different type of foot infantry, flying, swarm, and 1 or 2 little smasher units, which in this case would be the Beast and the Spawn. But we're not talking about anybody else today. We're just talking about the Plague Demons. Up on the screen, this is a flash showing you what's in the army list. Now let's get to the battle report, where I get to show off the sweet, sweet paint job for these guys. First model this week is the Harbinger, equipped with wings and 2 swords. He also has the Caster 2 ability to sling some spells. He's going to be attached to a unit of 10 Furies, all armed with the Rending Claws. There are 10 of them, I just can't fit them all on the spinny thing at once. Then there are 3 squads of Plague Warriors. Each of them has a champion, with the all-important upgrade that gives them +1 to their regeneration rolls. They are all armed with dual hand weapons. Then for the 2 Plague Beasts, we have 2 of the champion on giant snails. Just because, man, look at these things. They are so cool looking. And their opponent today will once again be the Saurian Star Host, seeing if they can continue what seems to be a winning streak. We've introduced this army 2 times already, so if you want to see the breakdown and the spinning and the showing off, look at the 2 previous videos we've had. They're waiting for you there. With 2 objectives on the board today, the demons and the dinosaurs are going to be fighting over no man's land. Using the standard deployment, we are going to be using progressive objectives again. The Saurian army has to completely deploy before the demons hit the board. All of their units either using ambush or scout. The demons that hit the board scout forward, leaving 2 plague beasts and a unit of warriors in ambush. The Saurians have their gators in ambush as well. Each player rolls dice to see who goes first. The demons get a 6 and they're going to go first. The unit of demon warriors just nuzzle up to their objective. The chameleons move forward and spot the plague warriors in the underbrush, firing off their toxic rounds. Deep in cover, they're able to get 5 hits, but the armor, cover, and regeneration of the plague warriors stop all the damage completely. The second unit of plague warriors nuzzle up to their objective as well. The Raptor Riders double time through the middle of the board over to the first objective to contest it from the plague warriors. The Harbinger and the Furies charge into the Raptors after a swirling melee, and this particular dice roll, remember in the intro where I talked about poison and rending interacting with each other? I didn't think it was going to happen so immediately. So the squad of Furies and the Harbinger are able to completely wipe the Raptor squad. The Triceratops moves forward and its crew level their guns at the Harbinger and the Fury squad. They hit 5 out of 6 times. The Furies fail all their armor saves. But what I forgot to mention last turn is the Harbinger was able to turn on +1 to regeneration to his own squad, and they're able to reduce that down to only 3 lost after the regeneration rolls. The Saurian Guardian squad is able to charge through the underbrush and touch the second objective, meaning that is now contested. Then the Saurian warriors move across the back of the field, going to support the other side, while the little cyber swarms just kind of cyber swarm their way up the middle of the board. So at the beginning of turn 2, all the ambushers hit the board. Plague beasts in the back on the 2 flanks of the Saurian Star Host army. Gators right in the middle of the demon side of the board. And then a squad of plague warriors showing up behind them. The Plague Beast in the back takes the first activation of turn 2 and plows into the side of the Saurian warriors. Don't worry, everybody, he's not slow. He's a racing snail. Charging in, he ends up doing 3 wounds to the Saurian warriors, who turn and throw everything they have at the snail, with the dice being extra spiky. And they end up with 15 hits. The snail makes 10 of his saves and 1 of his regeneration rolls. So the Saurian warriors losing the combat need to make a morale test, which they pass. The Gators charge into the back of the Harbinger and the Fury squad. The alligators doing what the alligators do best. They rip and tear, knocking down 6 of the Fury, even with all of the stacked regeneration rolls. The Harbinger and his single Fury companion strike back, only able to do 2 wounds to the Gator squad. The Plague Demon Warriors on the other objective charge into the Guardians that they see coming. With their massive number of attacks and poisoned weapons, they're able to do just 5 wounds on the squad. That's enough to take it off the board. The Chameleons move forward and fire at the Warriors that just so ingloriously ripped apart the Guardians. Lots of hits are scored, but with the armor and regeneration rolls, not a single Plague Warrior goes down. The second Plague Beast charges into the Chameleons, and after all of its attacks, it is only ever really able to hit 1 time. But the Chameleon does fail his armor save. The Chameleons attack back, doing 1 wound to the Plague Beast. The Saurian Warriors decide that they're going to pull out their pistols and fire at the Plague Beast that has gotten into their squad. They're able to do an alarming number of hits. The Plague Beast then passes everything except for 1 armor save, taking 1 wound, taking him to half health, and he fails his morale test, making him pinned on the spot. The squad of Plague Warriors in the back are just moving forward to support everything else in the next turn. The Trike, seeing its opportunity, charges between the buildings and slams headfirst into the Harbinger. But the Harbinger, being a demon, and being a very tough demon at that, did not take any wounds from any of the attacks. All of his regeneration rolls were able to save him. So the Harbinger and the 1 random Fury attack back. Again, the defense of the Trike was able to keep it from taking any wounds. The weird thing is that the Trike is Fear 2, and the Harbinger is only Fear 1. Even though nothing was damaged and no wounds were caused, the Trike still won combat. Then, of course, the Harbinger failed his morale test, causing him and the rest of his squad to run off the board. The Plague Warriors charge into the Gator units, and between all of their attacks, they're able to put 1 wound on the Gators, which is enough to put the 3rd wound on the first wounded Gator, removing him from the board. Then the Gators attack back. Between good rolling and regeneration, not a single Plague Warrior goes down. Last activation of turn 2. The Cyber Swarms decide to charge the Plague Beast, and in the most Cyber Beast way possible, this is what they roll to hit. And with those 2 6s, the Plague Beast actually fails an armor save, but passes the regeneration roll, attacks back doing 1 wound, and then the Cyber Beasts are pinned going into turn number 3. The Plague Warrior squad in the back finally has caught the Gators as they charge them in the rear. Between all their attack, they're able to take out 1 of the Gators when they cause 3 wounds, and then the Gators in return are able to kill off 2 of the Warriors. The Gators then pass their morale test. The Trike charges into the squad of Plague Warriors that are sitting on the objective, killing off 3 of the Plague Warriors, and with their attacks back, they kill nothing. Then proceed to fail their morale test, causing them to be pinned on top of the objective. The Plague Beast fighting the Saurian Warriors decides to unpin himself. The Saurian Warriors who were fighting the Plague Beast plow through the jungle and charge into the Plague Warriors that are sitting on the objective. In the swirling combat, both sides are able to kill 4 members of the opposite squad. So it is a push with no morale test needed. They'll just continue fighting next turn. The Plague Beast attacking the Chameleons goes back in for another attack, and he's able to kill off 1 of them. Then they do 1 wound in return. Because the Plague Beast's Fear 1 ability, it wins the combat, forcing the Chameleons to roll a morale test, which they then fail and run off the board. And the Saurians' next activation, the Cyber Beasts are unpinned. Last activation for the Demons, the squad of Plague Warriors on the objective in front of the Trike unpins. I must have missed the wrong button when we were recording, but here the Gators attack into the Plague Warriors. With the regeneration, they save everything. The Plague Warriors attack back into the Gators, taking out the last Gator and forcing the commander to take a test, who then fails, causing the Gators to run off the board. Last activation for the turn, the Warriors that are on the objective attacked back into the Saurian Warriors. They're able to kill 1 of them, and the Saurian Warriors attack back, killing 1 of the Plague Warriors, causing again another push with no morale test needed. Moving on to turn number 4. The Trike adjusts himself on the objective and charges into the squad of Plague Warriors on top of it. After all of his attacks, he only does 1 wound to the Plague Warriors, who then attack back and do 2 wounds to the Trike. The Plague Warriors charge into the Saurian Warriors, who are harassing them on their objective. They're able to take out all the Saurian Warriors, leaving it down to the Gecko. The Gecko, who then has had enough of their crap, proceeds to roll 2 6s to hit, but with Predator and Furious, then that becomes 5 hits, but unfortunately the Plague Warriors are able to save, only losing 1. It was almost really cool. The Gecko then passes the morale test with flying colors because he just doesn't care anymore. Next activation, the Gecko charges back into combat, hitting 1 time, fighting admirably, but the Plague Warrior saves it. Then the Plague Warrior reminds them he's just a Gecko, as he's removed from the board. The Plague Beast in the back attacks the Cyber Swarms, able to do enough wounds to take 1 out. They do nothing in return and are then pinned. Across the board, at what is left, having the final unit of the Saurians on the board that has not activated, still pinned, that will be the end of the game. Adding up the scores, the final is 5-1 in favor of the Demons. Their regeneration allowing them to stay on the board for a lot longer than they should have, where all the other enemies of the Saurian Warriors have crumbled in the past. So that's it for today. I hope you all had a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. We got a poll running right now for who's the next army that's going to fight the Plague Demons. We've moved into the Age of Fantasy for the time being, so there's an option of 4 different Age of Fantasy armies. Also, we're getting to a point where I'm going to be running some armies that don't have models made by one-page rules. They don't have a model range for everybody. I'm going to continue printing all the stuff that they have, but to give me some time to get the models ready, I'm going to go ahead and put some options up for some armies that I already have that they don't make models for. So come back to the channel and vote on the community post to tell me which ones you guys want to see next out of the options that I give you. So until next time, make sure you have fun out there and keep rolling those dice. Happy holidays.